All right, everybody. Welcome to podcast number 23 of the Facts Over Feelings podcast. I'm once again joined by my good friend Ryan Marister, and we have a pretty similar slate as usual. We're going to be talking a little bit about the recent baseball action, including the Rays, Astros, Dodgers, Braves, and obviously the World Series starting tonight. A little bit of NBA news, and obviously a whole bunch of NFL per usual. So I'm going to kick it off. Ryan, let's start with you. Let's talk a little bit about baseball, and I want to highlight the Tampa Bay Rays and Houston Astros, and your thoughts on that series.
Yeah, no, thank you, Trevor. The Tampa Bay and Houston series, I don't really think that there's that much to say other than I think we were all rooting against the Houston Astros going into the series. I think everyone got what they wanted. As a guy who's rooting for the Rays, I was really nervous. I know Trevor and I were talking uh leading up to game 7, and Trevor said, or I believe it was during game 6, he said if they win game 6, Houston, I think Houston wins in 7. And
That's
they
what I
had
said. I did say that.
they had all the momentum. They were down 3 games to 0 to Tampa. I mean, you thought that Tampa had this in the bag. I mean, I sure did,
Hmm.
and I was happy. I was ecstatic. And then all of a sudden, Houston comes roaring back. Carlos Correa has, he really did have a very good series. Michael Brantley had a very solid series. Jose Altuve, great series as well. After struggling all season long, I think he batted around 220 or 230, but he showed out in this series and in the playoffs. But Houston almost made a massive comeback, but in the end, luckily it wasn't enough. And I just want to shout out Charlie Morton, a guy who, uh, you know, I. I didn't really know about coming into this year because I've taken some
Hmm.
time off of watching baseball. And coming into this year, I saw that he had a fantastic year last year pitching, and he showed up this in this game when it mattered most. In Game 7, he pitched 5 2/3, allowed no runs on 2 hits. I mean, that's exactly what you need from your starter in Game 7. And Charlie Morton proved that he's one of the best, as he tried to prove this past year. Yeah, I just wanted to shout him out and say, great job, Charlie Morton.
Yeah, I completely agree with your point on everyone cheering for the Tampa Bay Rays. And I think in a weird way, it's almost better that this series had to go 7 games, right? Tampa Bay was up 3-0. It was too good. It was going too well, for Astros haters like you and I. And then all of a sudden, Houston starts coming back, and they have that belief factor again. They force game 7, and I thought they were going to win game 7. I told Ryan off the air they were going to win game 7.
Mm.
And Tampa Bay had to, right when it's there, the light at the end of the tunnel, Tampa Bay had to seal that shut. And I'm so happy that the Houston Astros lost. I think the entire baseball world is happy that the Houston Astros lost. But congratulations to the Tampa Bay Rays. They really came out of nowhere this year. Everyone thought it was going to be the Yankees or maybe even the Astros were still really good, the Athletics, even the Cleveland Indians. But
Yep.
the Tampa Bay Rays came out of nowhere. They had the best record in the AL, and now they're in the World Series. And they are a legitimate threat to beat the Los Angeles Dodgers, even though I think the Dodgers are still going to take the World Series. But
Hmm.
um, I also want to say one thing real quick.
Yeah.
I think what saved Tampa Bay in Game 7 was they got out to an early lead. It felt like that fast start gave Tampa Bay the confidence that they can win this game. They got up 3-0 after 2 innings, and they were able to just kind of grind it out and win 4-2. I think getting those early runs gave them the confidence to win this game, and I think it shook Houston a little bit. It took away Houston's mojo, Houston's confidence, and Tampa Bay was able to grind out a really good Game 7. Congratulations.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Good for them. And, having the top record in the American League this season, we'll see if they can use that momentum to go out and beat the Dodgers in the World Series. And I don't know. I think with that, I wanted to talk about the next series, which was Atlanta and the Dodgers.
Another
Where,
great series.
yeah, it was a fantastic series. It really was. I want to say, I think that the fans, having fans there, I know, we haven't had fans in baseball this whole season. I just want to say, I thought that that was just really cool to have some fans there at that game or at those games. I thought it added a little bit, but I thought the series was fantastic. Atlanta, I thought they had this in the bag. It's crazy. Both these
I
series,
did too.
these teams battled back. But it was a tale of two different series where Tampa Bay was able to fend off Houston's comeback. Atlanta was
Mm-hmm.
not able to hold off the Dodgers' comeback. The Dodgers came back from down 3 games to 1, came back and won the series. And, honestly, I just wanted to shout out uh, Mark Melancon. for the Atlanta Braves. They might have lost this series. They might not have been able to seal the deal, but he's just been absolutely sensational. Not only in the playoffs where he allowed 0 runs in these playoffs, but in the regular season, he had a sub-3 ERA. He was a fantastic closer for this team, and I just think it's really, really important for teams like this to have elite closers, and that's what Atlanta had. And they were able to go a long way with it. And they also have elite hitting. But I want to say Ronald Acuna struggled mightily in these playoffs,
I was about to say that you
yeah,
took a word right out of my mouth.
batting 167 in these playoffs. It's really difficult. It really is. It's really difficult to win and make the World Series nonetheless when your best player is hitting 167 with not doing much in the playoffs. So that was tough, but they almost overcame it. But in the end, the Dodgers' talent, was just too much, and Cody Bellinger ultimately sealed the deal for the Dodgers.
Yeah, I agree again with a lot of what you just said. Shout out Mookie Betts. He had a terrific fielding series, I believe, robbing 2 home runs
Mm,
in back-to-back games. Cody Bellinger with the huge home run in the
yeah.
bottom of the seventh to give the Dodgers their first lead of the game. Um, Again, just a great series. You can mention Ronald Acuna really struggling, but I think baseball is a very team-oriented sport, so it's hard to say one batter cost them the series. I thought the Braves, Marcell Ozuna, Freddie Freeman, Dansby Swanson, all special talent. They have a terrific batting lineup. But I think it just points to how good the Dodgers are. And I've said it even though I'm not a huge baseball watcher, I've been saying it the entire year. The Dodgers are the best team in baseball, and they're proving me right. They're 4 wins away from proving me right. And I think they just had too much firepower and, too much experience. They got a lot of winners on this team and a very hungry team as well, especially after the whole Houston Astros, robbing them a World Series with the whole
Yeah.
cheating thing, obviously. So I think they're a very hungry team. And I think it's destiny. I think LA is just there's some kind of magic going on in LA right now. The Lakers winning a championship, the Dodgers are on their way to winning a championship. Um, but it's going to be a terrific World Series and something that I probably will tune into actually. And I can't lie, I'm probably going to watch it.
Wow.
And I will go Dodgers in 7. Excuse me, Dodgers in 6.
Mm.
But don't discount the Tampa Bay Rays, man. That's a really good team over there.
Yeah. No, it's an absolutely fantastic team. And I just think, and this becomes to a larger issue that you and I have both touched on in past podcasts, and we've talked about this just in general, which is, these big market teams always continually, either getting close, making the playoffs or winning the World Series,
Mm-hmm.
or at least being the favorites, right, to win the World Series. I mean, I think
Right.
everyone before the season would have the Dodgers at the top of their list or near the top of their list in teams who they thought would win
Mm-hmm.
the World Series this year. And now it's looking like, I mean, they have a very, very good shot at it. So it's going to be interesting to see because I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I am pretty sure that the Dodgers are very, very near the top in terms of team payroll this season in baseball, and the Tampa Bay Rays are near the bottom. I know the Tampa Bay Rays in past seasons have been very, very low when it comes to team spending and salaries on their payroll. So it'll be interesting to see which team ultimately prevails in the World Series because I think it's kind of a battle of two different ideologies or two different right? Because Tampa Bay doesn't draw the massive names. They can't sign the $300
Mm-hmm.
million deals that the Dodgers can. So I would be really interested to see which team wins. And personally, I'm rooting for the Rays because I want that small market team or smaller market team to end up prevailing because, I think that they don't get enough recognition in baseball, especially in the baseball sports media. So I'm hoping for the Rays, but I ultimately agree with you. I think the Dodgers will win the series. They just have too much talent, both when it comes to starting pitching and when it comes to hitting as well.
Just a couple interesting stats to piggy off what you just said. The
Mm-hmm.
Dodgers are second in MLB
Mm.
team payroll this year behind the New York Yankees, which is, seems reasonable.
Yeah.
And the Tampa Bay Rays are actually 28th out of 30 teams
See?
in team payroll this season.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a stat that Garrett Cole on the New York Yankees or a really high paid pitcher, makes more than the entire Tampa Bay Rays, starting rotation.
There you
So it
go.
does point to a tale of two different, the Moneyball Rays or the big market Dodgers, and it's a
Yep.
really interesting contrast. I'm with you. I want the Tampa Bay Rays to win. I think it's good for baseball. I'm critical of how baseball has no salary cap, so I think the Rays winning this one would be good. But
Yes.
yeah, the Dodgers are a better team, and I think it'll show throughout the series.
Yep. I would agree with that, but we'll see what happens. I mean, the Rays have gotten this far, and they've kind of
Mm-hmm.
surprised people with having, as we said multiple times, the best record in the American League. So we'll see if they can continue their success.
Totally.
Yeah. And Trevor, I mean, unless you have
With
anything,
that,
yeah.
no, I was gonna say with that we can move on from the MLB. You and I both gave our predictions, so now we're gonna touch on some NBA news real fast.
Yep.
The Los Angeles Clippers hired a new coach, Ty Lue. It's a very familiar name. Coached LeBron James back in Cleveland a few years back.
Mhm.
I believe he signed a 5-year deal with the Los Angeles Clippers. And Ryan, I want your thoughts on if this is a good hire or not.
I had mixed feelings when I first heard about this hire, and at the end of the day, I kind of think that it's again similar to the Doc Rivers hire with the 76ers. I really don't think it changes that much. Now, what I think moves the needle here is his assistants. Who will Ty Lue hire to surround himself with in LA? I think that's very important, and I think he did a really good job with his top assistant in Chauncey Billups. I think having a guy like that who was a great player, and I think can connect with his players, connect with the team, as he was a star at one point in Detroit, back in Detroit. I think that's going to help. I think that's going to help Ty Lue keep his players engaged, maybe provide a little bit more leadership that we've said they've been lacking for so many podcasts, so many months now. So I think overall it's a fine hire. I think Ty Lue on a team with a lot of stars can manage them. Do I think he's a great coach? No. I think he's good enough, and I think
Mm-hmm.
if you hire the right assistants, which I think Chauncey Billups is going to end up being a good assistant.
Right.
I think
And
that
they
it
have
could.
Sam Cassell as well as a good assistant. I like
Okay,
him.
yeah, but and if as long as you have the right assistants, I think it can definitely work out. So I think we'll have to see what happens in LA, but I'm not opposed to the hire at all.
I have a lot to say about this, and
Okay.
I'm not opposed to the hire either because I think, obviously you and I know Ty Lue is no Brad Stevens when it comes to X's and O's, right? Ty Lue is a personality, like moderator. He's going to be able to balance the voices in the locker room, the guys like Montrezl Harrell, Pat Bev, Kawhi Leonard. And what I found interesting this week, this is a little bit off topic, but it has to do with Kawhi Leonard. And I think people aren't giving Kawhi Leonard enough blame. People are blaming Doc
Mm,
Rivers for not being able to motivate the team. But hearing what I heard about Kawhi Leonard this week, he was late to team flights. He took extra games off. He was the only player on the team allowed to have a spouse on the team plane. Doc Rivers was giving Kawhi Leonard all these extra privileges, and I felt like
mm,
Kawhi Leonard was kind of abusing those. And it really pissed off some of the players in the Clippers locker room, guys like Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell, Patrick Beverly, who pushed the Golden State Warriors to 6 games the year before. You bring in Kawhi Leonard, you bring in Paul George, these arrogant guys, they think they're superstars, and Kawhi Leonard is a superstar in his own right. Paul George really didn't play like one this year,
mm,
and they only get one round further in the playoffs. And I think that created a lot of distaste in the locker room. And I think Doc Rivers took a lot of the blame for being fired. But I need to call out Kawhi Leonard here a little bit. And I want to see how Ty Lue's gonna counteract that. I want to see how Ty Lue's gonna be able to get Kawhi Leonard in line. Will he let him load manage as much? Will he let Kawhi Leonard live in San Diego and drive up to LA for team flights? Will he let
mm,
Kawhi Leonard's spouse on the plane? I don't know. I think Ty Lue needs to figure out how to get the locker room back on track because that's what ultimately costs the Clippers, as you and I mentioned.
yep.
I like the hire. I heard in Cleveland he got on LeBron James. He called out LeBron James a little bit a couple times. He was able to get in his face, yell at him a little bit, and I think that's what the Clippers are going to need. I think they're going to need a guy who doesn't need to know much about the X's and O's, but needs to be able to moderate the locker room personalities because it is an elite team. This is an elite championship team, and if Ty Lue can get everyone's heads on straight, I think they'll be fine. I do personally like the hire though.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I mean, you made a lot of good points there. I want to talk about the whole Doc Rivers kind of providing Kawhi some favoritism, right?
He
And
did.
this is a problem with with a lot of stars, or at least you hear about it, right? You
I mean, and
hear,
it works with LeBron James, but
yeah,
clearly
well,
Kawhi Leonard's no LeBron James. You know what I mean?
yes, yeah, and it's not even that. I think it works with LeBron James because he's such a because he's not only a leader in
Leader
terms of
by example.
playing, he's
Yeah,
a leader in terms of being vocal. So I think it
he
works better with
is.
that. I also think, to my understanding, LeBron doesn't bring like his wife
No,
on team
no.
planes, and not no one else is allowed, right? He doesn't drive up from a different city for team flight. I mean, that's these
Hmm.
things aren't things that I've heard LeBron James doing.
Agreed.
So I think that, you're right. I mean, Kawhi does deserve some of the blame if these reports are true. And I've also heard that a lot of players were at least frustrated with I believe, with his load management right during the season, that he would be able to take some games off. And, like,
Hmm.
why do we have to play and our best player just gets a night off? Like, he's not even hurt.
Right.
What is this? So, yeah. And even if those reports aren't true, I mean, at least it's going to put some doubt, or at least I'm sure it's crossed their minds, some of these players, particularly during these struggles they had in the playoffs. So you're right. We'll see how Ty Lue can manage this locker room. I want to say it'll be interesting to me to see if these players can handle Ty Lue standing up to them, right?
Which I think he will. I think he will.
Particularly Kawhi and Paul George. I want to see if they can handle it, because I think Kawhi will be able to handle it. I just don't know, if both of them have been able to have ever had this sort of like a coach who just like is very hard on them, and isn't afraid to stand up to the star power, right? To their, how they're so good that no one really ever questions them or doesn't really question them in a serious manner. So I'll
Hmm.
see if they're able to handle that. If they are, and if Ty Lue does in fact do that, I think that this team is set up for success, because, as we've said, they're an
Hmm.
elite team, a ton of talent, and we'll see what happens. But I am
Hmm.
optimistic. I am optimistic, but I want to see how it works. During the regular season next season before making a judgment, because yeah, I just want to see how it works out to start the year.
And yeah, one final point on this. I think this is real. I think the guys like Montrezl Harrell, Beverly, Lou Williams,
Mm,
guys who have been there and built this team up, I think they're going to be the ones that like Ty Lue the most, because I do feel like Ty Lue will stand up to a Paul George or a Kawhi Leonard and call them out if they're not playing well. Maybe call them out for load management. Load management. I don't know how they're going to stand up to him, but I think by Ty Lue standing up to those two guys, I think the rest of the locker room is going to grow in respect for Ty Lue.
mm,
And the Clippers have a lot of good role players, and those role players are important, to their team's success. So if they see Ty Lue as a guy that, doesn't play favoritism, doesn't give guys special privileges, I think
mm.
they're going to respond to that onto the court. So we'll see how it plays out. I'm optimistic. Again, this is a championship team with or without Ty Lue. They're good enough to win an NBA championship. They just need to figure out the locker room a little bit, and they'll be right there next year.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. And I mean, we'll see what happens again. But it was an interesting hire, and I mean, Ty Lue's going to get hired somewhere. It's just a matter of time. So
I agree.
we'll see how it works out. And I mean, I don't really have any other thoughts, Trevor. If you,
Actually, one other one. This is just
yeah.
this is kind of a conspiracy. Is it interesting to you that Ty Lue, turns
Hmm.
down the Laker job when LeBron's there and then takes the Clipper job, a year later?
You know, that's an interesting question. On the on the surface, you could say, maybe the money just didn't work out.
And they
Maybe
didn't give him
he,
the Lakers didn't give him the 5-year deal he was looking
yes,
for.
yes,
So that's a
that
big part of it,
is.
I'm sure.
That is true. That's probably a part of it. But I do want to say, and as a Cavs fan, I understand this, because as a Cavs fan, I view Ty Lue, and I have viewed Ty Lue as the coach that kind of rode the coattails of LeBron. Not to say that he's not a good coach, but to say that he was just the guy that was there when LeBron and Kyrie led us to a title. So I
Hmm.
think maybe, and it's reasonable for Ty Lue to want this, to want an opportunity where he can go to another team, albeit a super team kind of, but where he could go without LeBron and say, hey, like, I'm a good coach. I can win without LeBron James. I can be successful without LeBron James. So
Hmm.
I do applaud Ty Lue for doing that. I applaud him for going to a team that doesn't have LeBron on it, and I think it's very possible, Trevor, that that he did in fact want to go to a team without LeBron to kind of just prove himself, right? To prove that he can do it.
I agree with a lot of what you just said. I think it's a great point.
Yeah.
The whole point about riding his coattails, yeah, this is a chance for Ty Lue to really show himself as an NBA coach. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see what happens. And I think he is set up for success, so we'll see how it goes. Um, But with that, Trevor, I think that we can move on from the NBA, right? And we have a ton of other NFL games this
A
past
ton to
week.
talk about in the NFL.
Yep, yep. But and Trevor and I just wanted to start off with a couple games of our own, more specifically. And Trevor, if you
Let's
don't
do
mind,
it.
I'm just gonna start off with one of mine, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
I was gonna start with the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, this game was played on Monday afternoon, Monday evening, and I expected this game to be a little bit closer than it was. I think the score looks closer than the game was.
It
I
really,
think
yeah.
I think that Kansas City, it was weird. Like Kansas City didn't really seem to have this game in doubt, even when they were up by one possession. Buffalo just seemed to never be able to get anything going offensively. Josh Allen looked absolutely horrible, particularly in
He
the first
did.
half. He had 41 yards passing in the first half, I believe, and I think he finished 14 to 27, but he started off abysmal. I think it was like some like 4 for 12 or something like that. It was
Hmm.
something along those lines, and it was just really, really bad. So Josh Allen struggled mightily in this game, and it was a great bounce back game for this Kansas City defense because this Kansas City defense gave up 40 points to the Las Vegas Raiders and Derek Carr. So they gave up a ton of points to a pretty average football team, and to come back and only give up 17 to a team that was averaging 30 points per game over its first 4 games this season. That's a great
Hmm.
job, and to slow down an MVP candidate in some people's eyes, in
No
Josh.
longer, no
Yeah,
longer,
no,
but
no, no longer. But in some people's eyes, they believe that. So, but they slowed him down, I suppose, Josh Allen. And yeah, I mean, they just made them look. They made them look like a very normal team. And this is what you expect from a Super Bowl winner. You expect them to handle games like this against solid teams, but not great teams, and that's what they did. It was raining. Mahomes didn't have a crazy game, but he completed most of his passes, didn't make any major
mhm.
mistakes. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, Trevor, you can talk about this guy in just a minute, but I think
Love
Clyde
him.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a fantastic player. I mean, he seems to just. I mean, they were gashing this Buffalo defense the entire night. It wasn't even a product of Edwards-Helaire so much as the offensive line. They were just destroying the D line of the Bills up front. Edwards-Helaire averaged over 6 yards to carry. He looked electric, bouncing off tacklers. But I will say, I think KC needs to give him the ball more in the red zone. They seem to refuse to play him inside the 20, which is kind of weird to me.
Hey, you're
They
telling me.
they put in they put in Darwin Thompson a few times around there. They put in Darrell Williams
Daryl
multiple
Williams.
times around there. So that was a little strange to me, and we'll see how the Le'Veon Bell addition affects CEH, but I don't think it'll impact him that much. I think Bell will just be used in the red zone and kind of as a receiver in the slot, kind of like Kareem Hunt with Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I was very surprised to watch how bad the Bills' defensive front was yesterday because they were getting pushed around. And Kansas City's O-line isn't that healthy. They have a couple of injuries up front. I know their left tackle Allegretti is a backup, and he's only in his second year, and he had a really good game there yesterday, left tackle. But yeah, my guy Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he ran angry. He knew Le'Veon Bell was coming into town. He knew this was his last game where he was going to get the bulk of the snaps, and he ran angry, and you could see it. Guys were pumping him up every 8, 9 yard carry. Guys were pumping him up, high five, and being like, "Good running." And you could just tell he was running downhill. He was not messing around trying to juke people out. He was trying to sprint through people, run through people, and I thought it was a very strong showing to Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid that I'm still here. I know you brought in Le'Veon Bell, and I think he took it a little personally, which is what I like to see. And I thought he responded really well. Um, I think the Bills are a little overhyped. They got off to that 4-0 start, but now they played two quality teams, and they got killed by Tennessee last week. And they really weren't competitive against Kansas City this week. The score shows a pretty relatively close game, but they weren't competitive.
Yeah.
Josh Allen, you're right, was horrendous. I'll cut him a little bit of slack. It was raining, but Mahomes was just as accurate in the rain.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I think Buffalo's a little overrated. Miami is surging. I still think the Bills will take this division, but Miami's surging. We'll talk about this a little bit more. The impact of Tua. How will that impact the
Yep.
Dolphins? But if I'm a Buffalo fan, I'm a little bit worried in terms of the postseason. I'm not necessarily worried about getting there, but can I win a game in the postseason with Josh Allen? And I don't think Josh Allen is a good enough pure passer to win a playoff game yet.
Yep. I would agree with that. And just before we move on, I don't want to harp too much on Josh Allen here because he's having a great year. But a lot of people are like, oh, he's proven the doubters wrong. He's come into his own. And sure, he's played better this year. But I mean, this game
Mm-hmm.
and the last 2 games really have shown that he still has his struggles, still has his flaws,
Right.
and he struggled with accuracy, particularly yesterday on Monday. I mean, you saw he missed a ton of open throws, particularly over the middle of the field. A couple easy crossing routes to Cole Beasley. He missed a couple outside throws. He just wasn't really hitting throws that he should, and that's been a problem for him for his whole career. And we'll see. I mean, if he can fix that up, but he definitely still has some question marks. So we'll see how he bounces
Mm-hmm.
back. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, Trevor, do you want to give us a game that you wanted to talk about? Want to move on to?
Absolutely. I'm going to pull a page out of Ryan's playbook and talk about my own team on the podcast. I'm going to talk
A
about my Arizona Cardinals finally getting our primetime game under the
Mm,
big lights on Monday Night Football. And everyone knows what happened. We beat up the Cowboys. Good old 38-10 action.
mm,
I'm going to give my Cardinals a lot of credit. I thought Vance Joseph called a great game defensively. He was very aggressive. He was attacking Andy Dalton all night, and Andy Dalton was flustered. And that O line for Dallas was really injured. They didn't have Tyron Smith, Zach Martin, and I believe one other, Travis Frederick, I believe, wasn't playing either. So our D line was getting after him, and that's without Chandler Jones. So our D line was getting after Andy Dalton. That was there, they weren't giving their receivers enough time to get open. Guys like Lamb, Cooper, Michael Gallup, we weren't giving them a lot of time to get open just because of our D line. And again, Kyler really didn't play that good of a game yesterday. I mean, he went 9 for 24, 188 yards. 80 of those yards came on one pass to Christian Kirk.
mm.
But I think it shows, look, I mean, this is a really bad Dallas defense, so I don't want to be too high on the Cardinals here. And we play a 5-0 Seahawks team next week.
Yeah.
But I think the Cardinals offense is, relatively multifaceted. Kenyon Drake had a good game. DeAndre Hopkins had a quiet game, but he had a big play. I thought Fitzgerald made some good catches early in the first half. And I think if we're able to win, multidimensional, if we're able to win with a dominant defensive performance or a dominant offense performance, if we can have one or the other, I think that's really going to help
Hmm.
our chances in making the playoffs. But yeah, I think this game points to how bad Dallas is. It points to they need to extend Dak really badly. And Dallas's defense is, I mean, a top five worst defense ever. I don't know. They've
Wow.
given up in the first, I believe, what, 6 games. They've given up. I think they've given up the fifth most points in NFL history through the first 6 games ever.
Wow.
So it's an all-time bad defense, and Andy Dalton is no Dak Prescott. So those are my main takeaways. Good win though for us.
Yeah, yeah, no. So I have similar thoughts to you, but I kind of want to go on a different path here. I want to talk about the Dallas Cowboys team in general. I mean, this team,
Hmm.
you watch your star quarterback get hurt. I mean, you all feel for the guy. You win the game, and you're like, okay, we're gonna do this for Dak, right? We're gonna play for him. We're gonna try to do our best. And you know what they do? They come out against a what? Was it a? Correct me if I'm wrong. What was your guys' record coming in this 3-2? A 3-2
Three and
Cardinals
two.
team, a team that's probably going to end up being around 500, and
Hmm.
you go out against this team and you just it wasn't even close. I mean,
No, it wasn't.
you looked flat. I mean, I want to say Amari Cooper looked like he didn't care. I mean, like some of these guys, like he just a lot of these guys to me just looked like they just lost all their fight on the offense. Like I wanted to see them come out firing on all cylinders. I think that they have a ton of offensive talent. Ezekiel Elliott fumbles not once but twice. He's fumbled
Twice in a
five
row.
five times this season. I mean, it's just unbelievable to me. I mean, the amount of mistakes by these guys, and I don't want to put it all on Andy Dalton. I really don't, because first of all, one of his interceptions was a defensive holding that should have come back.
Completely agree.
That was
Completely
not
agree.
his fault.
The Drake Kirkpatrick
And
play, yeah.
his second pick was just a great play by Buda Baker. I mean,
It was a great individual play.
he should have recognized the safety help over the top. But regardless, Andy Dalton missed on a lot of throws. Yes, he should have been better. Yes, but I just don't really think that anyone was out there to help him out. You know, like he didn't have any help. It was just kind of like they have all this talent, and I didn't feel like anyone really stepped up to the plate and was like, "Hey, like Andy, like I'll like lend you a hand. I'll help you. I'll help you into this game. Get a feel for the game. Get no rhythm." It never really happened for Dallas, and so that was really
Hmm.
difficult. And I want to credit Arizona real quick because they really didn't put up great offensive numbers. They
No,
really
they
didn't.
didn't.
And if you take away Drake's 670-yard touchdown run, and DeAndre Hopkins' 60-yard catch with
And Kirk's 80-yard play.
okay, you don't have to. My point is a couple garbage time plays in Hopkins and
Oh, I just
Drake.
mean like in general. If
Oh,
you take away the big plays, it was
yeah,
a flag. That was
yeah.
my point. That was my
Okay,
point.
yeah. Okay, yeah. I was saying like the garbage time plays. I mean, this team didn't really have to do much offensively to just destroy this team. So, I mean, the Arizona defense, whether it was a product of just the Cowboys being bad, I don't know. But they looked really good they looked really good yesterday. I think that Jordan Hicks was a great signing. I mean, he had 10 tackles
Oof, dropped
yesterday.
interception. Oof.
Yeah, that yeah, that was tough, but he still played a great game. I want to shout out Byron Murphy as well. He looked really
He had a good
nice.
game.
He had a couple great coverages. I think on it was on Cedric Wilson over the middle. He had perfect coverage. The safety was over the top, but just great play. He actually broke up the pass. Didn't even need the safety's help, but he was playing great. The Cardinals just came out hot. They came out ready to play, and they showed it yesterday. So it was a great win for them.
I want to make one final point about the Cardinals, and I've mentioned this before on the podcast. Obviously, we got DeAndre Hopkins last offseason, but I want to give Steve Keim some credit because he brought in some defensive players that are capable NFL defensive players to help with our defense.
Mm,
We were one of the worst defenses in every statistical category last year. And then he brings in Jordan Phillips, the D tackle. He brings in a Devondre Campbell, a middle linebacker, who has been really good for us. Devin Kennard has contributed. Dre Kirkpatrick, who made the fluky interception that probably should have been called back, he's been contributing
yeah.
for us. And then you have the emergence of our young guys like Buda Baker and Byron Murphy. And look, this Cardinals defense is better. We have players on defense now. Obviously, our offense is going to be what our offense is,
Mm,
but our defense going forward, I was a little critical of Vance Joseph last year. I think Vance Joseph just needed some personnel. And again, that was without Chandler Jones, who was arguably our best defensive player yesterday. So look out, man. I mean, if our D line can play like that every game and get to the quarterback, we can win a lot of football games. But you're right. Ultimately, I think this is more about Dallas just being really bad and hurting themselves.
yeah.
And I'm not going to say McCarthy gets fired after this year because Dak got hurt. But if they've looked like this with Dak, I wouldn't be surprised if he got sacked after 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be
He
surprised.
won't get fired because Dak's not playing and it's Andy Dalton. So I think he'll survive till next year. But man, I mean, he has done a horrendous job.
Yeah,
Horrendous job.
yeah. We talk about like I compared him to Doc Rivers, and it might not be a great comparison, but I'm telling you, big name recognition, and I just don't see the motivation. I don't see the
You're
changes he's.
right.
I don't see the
Dallas doesn't look. They don't look energetic. They look
yeah.
like they don't want to be there. They
Hmm.
they just have no.
He also
I
doesn't
don't
seem
know.
like he also doesn't seem like he hired the right coordinators. I mean, he hired a D
Yeah, whoever that
coordinator.
D coordinator. Yeah, wow.
I mean, like there was some talent on that defense. I mean, it wasn't completely devoid of talent. I mean, I guess I
Hmm.
know Van Der Esch was out. He's coming back this week, but you have some decent
He played
linebacking core.
yesterday. He played yesterday.
Oh, it did play yesterday. Yeah, and
Yeah.
they were just abysmal. So I don't know. I don't know what you do. I think the D coordinator will definitely be fired. But we'll see what happens with Dallas. We'll see where they go next.
Hmm.
It's gonna be interesting to follow.
They're still probably going to win the division too, but
Well, we'll save that for the next podcast. What a terrible division. But with that, we're going to move on to another game. I wanted to touch on this game really quick. Between two bad teams record wise, although I think they're playing worse than their record shows in the Atlanta Falcons, or playing better. They are better than the record shows in the Atlanta Falcons and the Minnesota Vikings. I think that these teams aren't as bad as one-win teams. I think that they'll both finish better than they are. I want to talk about this game because I was glad to see Atlanta bounce back. And this is the opposite of what the Cowboys are doing. The Cowboys had a major player, major component of their team go down, right?
hmm
And they didn't show up. The Falcons made a change. They fired their head coach. And look what it did.
GM as well. Yeah.
And their GM. It energized them immediately, and you could see it. You could see it, particularly on the offense. This offense came out firing on all cylinders. Matt Ryan almost 400 yards, 4 touchdowns. Julio Jones had a monster game, back to his old self, and their defense stepped up.
Finally.
their
Yeah,
defense,
it
their defense
did.
stepped up. It really did. While Kirk Cousins had a big second half, I mean, the guy had under 100 yards at half and 3 interceptions. 3 interceptions against the Atlanta Falcons defense. So I just think that like this defense stepped up when they needed it to. They finally got a win, and I think the culture might have turned around, or at least it's the start of a turnaround. So I was good. I was glad to see that out of Atlanta. They clearly
Hmm.
needed a change, and I also want to talk about Justin Jefferson for 1 second.
I was going to mention him. Yeah.
What
Wow.
a fantastic player.
Wow.
I mean, there's a ton. We knew it was gonna be a ton of great receivers in this draft class, but wow, I mean, there are so many. Justin Jefferson is up there for number one out of all the rookie receivers. I mean, there's multiple,
Hmm.
but he's just been sensational. 9 catches, 166 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I mean, we'll see if he can keep it up, but he's just been amazing. He's just the explosiveness, the big plays. I mean, it just never stops, even in a blowout loss like this. So it's really cool to see a receiver like that come into his own.
Yeah. Before I get to the rest of the game, you're right. Justin Jefferson was a home run. I know you liked him out of LSU a
Yep,
lot. I think we both liked him, but I think you especially talked about him on the
I did.
podcast several times, and he seems to be a home run for that franchise. I will say this: Atlanta did respond really well, and I think Atlanta knows that they're better than what their record indicates. They should have beaten Dallas. They should have beaten Chicago. I believe they blew another lead somewhere in there against I forget who, but I'm pretty sure they've blown 3 leads this year that they could have won. Maybe only
Um,
two.
no, I think they did, but I can't
I
remember
can't remember
either.
the team, But I'm pretty sure. I mean, this team could easily be a 3-3 team, and
Hmm.
they'd be right there for at least a wild card spot with the new 7-team format.
Yep.
And you're right. Atlanta showed a lot of heart yesterday, and I think Matt Ryan had a unbelievable football game. 92.5 QBR, 136 quarterback rating. Julio Jones had a monster game.
Hmm.
And overall, I think this is an Atlanta team that won't make the playoffs this year. But sometimes if you finish a bad season strong, and I know there's still a lot of football left, by no means is the season over. But if you finish a bad season strong, I think that can carry into next year. And I think for Atlanta, they're trying to carry some momentum into next year. They need to reboot their secondary a little bit. Their front seven isn't great, but I think they really need to reboot that secondary. But yeah, they have an elite offense. They have an elite running back in Todd Gurley, who didn't have a great game yesterday.
No.
They have, in my opinion, two elite receivers in Ridley and Julio Jones. Hayden Hurst has been a nice addition for them. Russell Gage has, emerged as a nice young
Yes.
receiver, and Matt Ryan's won an MVP. So this is a really, really good offense. If
Hmm.
they can reboot the defense and find the right head coach, I think Atlanta can be a playoff team next year.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think
And
that
Minnesota's a dumpster fire.
yeah, I mean, we don't have time to talk about them for a long time, but they have looked like a mess. It's disappointing. The loss of Xavier Rhodes really seems to have hit them hard. Their secondary just looks really, really depleted. And I don't know what the answer is there. I really don't. And Kirk Cousins really struggling this year. Very inconsistent, to say the least. Um, but yeah, before we move on, I wanted to just say it'll be interesting to see. I know there was a report saying the NFL, a lot of NFL teams are looking at the Falcons, seeing will they trade Julio? Will they trade Matt Ryan? I think the answer is no. I don't think
Not
at
yet.
this time, I don't think you're going to do that. I think if you get a couple pieces in the offseason in the draft, I think you can rebuild that defense and your offense is good to go. I think your offense has shown it's more than capable. So, I don't think
And
they're going
here's
to
the
do that just
thing.
yet.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Look, I'm not saying Atlanta can do this, but
Mm.
I think 9-7 is good enough to get that final wild card spot. I think a 9-7 team could sneak into the playoffs in the NFC this year.
Mhm.
Atlanta's 1-5. They'd have to go 8-2 down the stretch in a very tough division. But I still think this Atlanta team can win 6 games this season, and I think they can carry a lot of momentum into next year. And I think they can contend next year. If Matt Ryan can play like he did yesterday, or if he can play every game like he did yesterday,
Mhm.
this Atlanta team can be really good. And I'm sure they're going to address the defense in the offseason. But this offense is elite.
Yeah,
And I think they reminded everyone that it's still elite yesterday.
I agree. I agree. And we'll see where they go from here. Both these teams, if they can build on the momentum or slow down the bleeding in the Vikings. So with that, Trevor, do you want to talk about your other game from this week?
Oh, this will be my favorite 5 or 10 minutes of the podcast right here. Any opportunity to crap on the Browns a little bit is one that I will take. And my game is the Browns Steelers. And where do I even start with this game? I want to shout out Chase Claypool. He seems like a home run. I want to shout out that Steelers defensive line. Oh my goodness, that defensive line is scary, scary good. Baker Mayfield was getting abused out there against a pretty good Cleveland O line, and I think Cleveland has a very highly rated O line according to Pro Football Focus.
Mhm.
They looked like horrible yesterday. But ultimately, and I've been saying this, Baker Mayfield for me is just not doing it. And I know you're going to disagree with me. I know you're going to say, "Oh, it was a bad team game," blah blah blah. Baker Mayfield just doesn't do it for me. He hasn't shown me anything this year, and even in their wins, he hasn't looked any better than he did last year. And there's no more excuses. They have the right head coach. They have the O line. They have the running backs. Their secondary is beat up, but their secondary, when healthy, is very good. Their front seven is pretty good. What if this team had a Matt Ryan, or if this team had even a Sam Darnold? I think this team would be far better than Baker Mayfield. And I know you're looking at me like, Sam Darnold, really? Baker Mayfield holds this team back, and it's evident he can't win you a football game unless he plays a really bad team and Nick Chubb goes for 150 yards and Kareem Hunt goes for 85 more. And it's evident. 38-6 of the Ravens, 38-7 to the Steelers. They beat a bunch of bad teams. They did beat the Colts, who are okay, not that good. Cleveland's an average football team, and Baker Mayfield's holding them back. But I'll let you take this because I know you watched this game closer than I did.
Yeah, so here's the thing, and this is what happens in the NFL, and I want to caution everyone against doing this, and I do it, and I do it from time to time. But part of
100 at a time.
part of the issue to me is people tend to craft just one general headline and paste it onto a game and say this is what happened. So the takeaway from this game, when you look at the score and you look at the box score and you didn't watch the game at all, you're going to say, well, Baker Mayfield's the reason this team lost.
He threw
And
two awful interceptions. Those were both completely his fault. One went for a pick six, I'm pretty sure. I mean, he was horrible.
I'll tell you this. Baker Mayfield was bad. Baker Mayfield had trouble standing in the pocket. He had trouble recognizing pressure. He had trouble recognizing coverages. He did not look good. He threw two terrible picks. Particularly, I thought his second pick was even worse than his first one. He scrambled out of the pocket. He could have just thrown it away. No, he threw it downfield, just right at the
Right
defender.
to a
Like
black jersey. Right.
I don't know what that was. He was really bad. But the thing that gets me is when a guy like Baker Mayfield's top 10 in QBR coming into this game. He's top 10 in the league in QBR. He's ahead of a lot of really good quarterbacks. And after this game, people yell at Baker Mayfield and say he's not the answer. Now, here's the thing. Again, he was really bad. But you have to look at the other pieces of this team. This team doesn't have a starting caliber safety on its entire roster. It starts a washed up Andrew Sendejo, and it starts a third string safety in Sheldrick Redwine, who clearly isn't ready, and his special
Who
teams
is
player at
that?
most.
Red wine? Wow, I've never even
Yes,
heard of him.
exactly. So two very bad safeties. They've been decimated by injury. Uh,
Okay, yeah.
and now,
Here's the thing, though.
now hold on.
Okay, go
And the
ahead. All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
worst linebacking core in the NFL can't stop anybody. Point being, the offense also nobody played well. Okay, the offensive line is supposed to be elite. Our best offensive lineman missed this game. Top rated guard in the NFL, Wyatt Teller, missed this game, which is a big loss. Big loss. And Baker was playing hurt. I just think it's a combination of everything. And the problem is, people will put one headline on a game and say it's all this guy's fault and he's not the answer, even when this team is 4-2 and will hopefully, and is looking like it has the easiest schedule in the NFL after this past game, by the way. So the Browns now have the easiest schedule in the NFL. People will look at this game and they'll say, wow, it's all Baker's fault. And then when the Browns go on and finish above 500, they'll say, oh, they didn't beat anybody good. To me, there's always an excuse to to drive home a point that somebody wants. And Baker might not be the answer. He might not. I don't know if he will be. It's a big question mark, but you have to see it through with the fourth head coach in 3 years. You got to give him the opportunity for the rest of this season to evaluate him, and I think next season as well. And if it doesn't work out, you cut him and move on after next year.
Yeah, you make some good points. I was being a little over exaggerative about how bad Baker Mayfield is. For me, the Browns, I love their team. And you're right, they are injured right now. Their secondary is a bit of a mess. For me, they look so non-competitive against good football teams. And I get the Steelers and the Ravens are elite football teams. They're not good football teams. They're elite. The Ravens might go to the Super Bowl this year, and the Steelers are 5-0. It's just I understand, you're missing your starting offensive lineman. Every team is dealing with an injury. Every team is dealing with something, a hole in their roster. And I think what separates you from being an average quarterback like a Kirk Cousins, like an Andy Dalton, is you're able to overcome holes on your team. And the Browns have holes because of injuries and other reasons. They have holes on their team versus, being an elite quarterback, a guy like, for example, Deshaun Watson, who lost the game against Tennessee, but he kept them in it. I mean, he against an elite, not elite, but a very good Tennessee team, he did what he could to win that football game. And they ended up losing, but he was competitive and he fought hard to the end. And for me, Baker just, I don't see that with Baker. And here's also why people are so hard on Baker, Ryan, and I think you forget this. He was the number one overall draft pick, right? There's a lot of pressure on the number one overall draft pick. We talk about guys like Trevor Lawrence who are going to go number one overall. People are going to expect the world of Trevor Lawrence. And even if he's solid and has a decent year, people are gonna bash him because they're like, well, he was supposed to be this. And I think there's a certain level of pressure that, it's a little unfair, but there's a certain level of pressure being a number one overall draft pick. You're the best player in that draft class, and Baker Mayfield is not living
Yeah,
up to those type of expectations.
Yeah, so I just want to say one more thing, and this is a problem I think that goes on with a lot of people through the NFL, and I think the issue is like, why does every quarterback have to end up being Patrick Mahomes? Why does every quarterback have to end up being elite for them to work out, for them to be worth it? Like, well, I think
Well,
that
it depends on what you want out of your team. Do you want to be an 8-8, 9-7 team, or
yeah,
do you want to win a Super
but
Bowl?
I would argue that you can win without an elite quarterback. Look at Jared Goff. The guy could arguably by the end of his career
He
turn
had
out
an elite year though.
he
He
could
had an
argue
elite year.
now he had an elite statistical year, but he's not an elite quarterback. He had an elite year because the team around him was fantastic and he played within his role. Okay, and he knew what to do. Sean McVay schemed it perfectly to allow Jared Goff to mask his weaknesses and play to his strengths. My point being is average quarterbacks or good quarterbacks, good, not great, not elite, not amazing, good quarterbacks can get you far in the playoffs. And I think for some reason people just forget that, or they want the world from the quarterback. I think that a guy like Baker might not be the answer. I don't think he'll be Tom Brady. I don't think he'll be Russell Wilson. I don't think he'll be Aaron Rodgers. Do I think he'll be Sam Darnold? No, I don't. I think he'll be better than that. Do I think that you need to give him time with his fourth head coach to unlearn all the bad habits he had last year? Has he already unlearned some of them? Yes, he has. Can he continue to learn? Yes. So I think that you need to, as tough as it is, you got to give him time to see, just to see if the guy can lead the team to wins. Because at the end of the day, that's all that matters. If he limits mistakes, plays his role like Jimmy G or Jared Goff do, then the sky's the limit for the team. That's
Here's
all.
what I
That's
also will say though. Beating a bunch of bad teams, that's the problem. That masks the issue in my opinion. If you go out there and beat a bunch of bad teams, you're going to play the Bengals again. I think you play the NFC East or something like that.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, you play the NFC East, which is four bad teams. You're probably going to win 10 games. But for me, it's going to mask, it's going to give, I don't want to say give you a delusional view of the Browns, but I feel like it's going to mislead people a little bit. Beating up a bunch of bad teams is great, but let's call it what it is. Beating up a bunch of bad teams, which makes you an average team. And I think Baker Mayfield's an average quarterback at best right now. He's not playing like it.
I mean,
So we have to, I think you and I don't see eye to eye on the expectations versus the media perspective,
yep,
but
that's fair.
we'll see. Maybe
Yep,
we're
we'll see.
overreacting. It was a really bad game all around. So we can't put
Yeah.
it all on Baker, but it's fun to make fun of Baker though. I'm not going to lie.
All right. Well, with that, I think we're going to move on to our final thing and close out this podcast. We wanted to talk about a new quarterback that's emerging this week in the Miami Dolphins organization. Ryan Fitzpatrick has been benched, and after their bye week, Tua Tagovailoa
Don't get
will
this at all.
will become the starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. Now I know what Trevor's going to say. I know Trevor's going to say, well, they were winning games. Ryan Fitzpatrick was leading this team to maybe even the division, the wild card. And while that might be true, that's not the point. And here's why this was a good decision by the Miami Dolphins. They sat Tua Tagovailoa so he could get healthy, make sure he's 110%. They sat him so
Okay.
he could learn behind Ryan Fitzpatrick, a guy who has more experience than almost any quarterback in the NFL. They sat him so he could be comfortable with this team. They want him to be in a position to succeed. I have a problem when people say, why are you playing him so early? He needs to sit for a whole year. He needs to sit for longer because they were winning. It's like, no. This guy is your future. You play him when he's ready. Experience will teach better than sitting on the bench ever will. Okay, as long as this guy's healthy, you picked him at number 5. You're going to start him. You're going to start him for the next 15 years, hopefully. And so I think that this is an okay call by the Dolphins. Their goal is not to win it all this year. And who knows? I think Tua can win them games. We haven't seen him play in the NFL. He has all the talent in the world. 45 of his 75 touchdown passes in college were outside the red zone. The guy has big playability. Okay, he's a really good player. People forget it after his injury against Mississippi State, and I'm excited to see it. But I caution people to kind of bash this decision to start him now. That's just my opinion, though.
I don't bash the decision, and you make a lot of good points. You actually, can you convince me a little bit that it might be a good decision? My only reason not to, and I get doing it now is, again, I get it, and I think Ryan Fitzpatrick seems like a very selfless guy. He doesn't seem like he's even bothered by this decision at all, and I think he probably knew going into the year that his time as the starter was limited. And for me, I just think the Dolphins I think the Dolphins found a little bit of momentum the last couple of weeks. And I know you don't want to wait too long to put into it. And I know experience, game experience is the best kind of, experience to get you prepared. For me, it just felt like the Dolphins had a little bit of momentum. And I know one of their wins was against the miserable Jets, and everybody's going to be the Jets this year. The Jets might go 0-16, but I don't. I just felt like you could rock. I don't know. Maybe I'm too much in the win now type of thing where you have the momentum. You're on a 2-game win streak. You're playing good, and Fitzpatrick's looked great the last couple of games. I got to give him. He's played great
Yeah.
the last 2 games. So for me, I just thought it was a little random to start 2-0 now. I thought conventionally what you usually do is you wait until the starter plays bad or gets injured. But you're right. I totally get this decision. I think the Dolphins are looking big picture that Tua is going to be their guy hopefully for the next 5 or 10 years. And even if you have to sacrifice a few games this year because he struggles a little bit to get him that game experience for next year, I totally get that. So for me, I thought if you want to try and win now, ride out Fitzpatrick until he starts struggling a little bit, especially since you found a little bit of momentum. And I don't like changing things up when it's going good. But again, the Dolphins know this better than we do. They've been watching Tua since they drafted him and even before then. So I don't love the decision. I don't hate the decision. We'll see how it plays out. I'm very excited to watch Tua play. I ultimately thought he would be the best quarterback in this draft class. I've said it multiple times. So I'm excited to see him play, and we'll see how he looks next after their bye week.
Yeah, there we go. I'm excited as well, and he has weapons around him. Myles Gaskin's no scrub. He's a solid running back. He's got Devontae Parker and Preston Williams there as well. We'll see what happens. Mike Gesicki got some good talent there. They'll get some more, but yeah, we'll see if he can succeed. So I thought it was also one more thing before you go. Really cool moment after the game, how he went and sat out on the field,
Cool picture. Great picture.
FaceTimed his parents, and sat right on the spot, I believe, where he played. He said, "Mom and Dad, this is where I started my career." I thought that was really cool. I thought that was neat, and they had that cool picture right of him in the stadium, so that was cool.
100%.
But with that, I think we're gonna conclude this podcast. I hope everyone enjoyed, and we'll be back with more MLB talk with the World Series next week. Back with any NBA news that may come up, and more NFL games, and maybe some college football. We'll see. But with that, we'll see you all next week.